Every year, a big chunk of the population, millions of people, struggle to breathe clearly thanks to pollen, dust, mold, or pet dander. Around 13% deal with something more chronic, and that's inflammation in the sinuses, also known as sinusitis. So, if you've ever felt that constant stuffy pressure or like you just can't get a deep breath through your nose, you know how frustrating it can be. When we're talking about seasonal allergies or hay fever, the usual suspects show up: sneezing, runny nose, itchy eyes, scratchy throat, even fatigue and brain fog. And sometimes it affects your skin and digestion too. And sinusitis can mean thick mucus, postnasal drip, pressure in your face, even ear pain, bad breath, and coughing that just won't go away. Now, conventional medicine often focuses on managing the symptoms, and sometimes we're very thankful for that, for the antihistamines, the decongestants, and the steroids, but that usually means temporary relief. And if we really want to change um, what's going on, we have to zoom out and ask what's triggering this in the first place. And that's what today is all about. We're going to look at root causes like gut health, liver function, hydration, and even emotional stress, and talk about how herbs, homeopathics, and lifestyle shifts can support the body in finding real lasting relief. So I've seen this pattern so often: clients with chronic stuffiness, mouth breathing, and constant congestion, even since they were kids. And many don't realize how much it's draining their energy, focus, and sleep. They've done the rounds of antibiotics, ENT referrals, maybe even sinus surgery, and it might help for a bit, but then the inflammation returns and they're right back where they started. And that's usually when, hopefully, the light bulb goes off. Maybe there's a root cause I haven't addressed. And that shift from symptom management to deeper healing is where natural approaches really start to shine. So let's break down two upper respiratory issues that are common: rhinitis and sinusitis. Rhinitis is more surface level, usually inflammation of the nose, sometimes affecting the eyes and throat too. About 7% of people deal with rhinitis. There are three main types. There's seasonal allergic rhinitis, and also known as hay fever, triggered by pollen, think spring and fall. There's non-seasonal allergic rhinitis caused by year-round irritants like dust, mold, or pet dander. And then there's non-allergic rhinitis, and that's not allergy related. Things like perfumes, cleaners, and pollution can trigger it. Is that like a emphasis on that, Bella? I don't know if you were sneezing or blowing your nose, but that fit right there. I'm going to mute you, babe, just in case you've got some more rhinitis symptoms that you want to express. Okay, that non-allergic rhinitis, non-allergy related perfumes, cleaners, pollution can trigger it. Clients who clean houses and had symptoms vanish once they switched to non-toxic products. Sinusitis, as opposed to rhinitis, goes deeper. It's inflammation of the sinuses themselves. Acute cases often follow a cold. Chronic sinusitis sticks around and affects about 13% of people. And when you add sinusitis and rhinitis together, accounting for overlap, around 15 to 20% of the population struggles with nasal breathing regularly. And that's a huge chunk of people living with this low level fatigue and brain fog just from not being able to breathe well. So, what does allergic rhinitis actually feel like? It usually starts with a runny or stuffy nose, but it's not just congestion. The nose is itchy, and people often rub the roof of their mouth with their tongue or constantly touch their nose. That's a sign that your body's irritated by something in the environment. Watery, itchy eyes are common too. Some people get those classic allergy dark circles or feel pressure in their forehead or under the eyes, right where the sinuses sit. As your body tries to flush the irritant out, you get postnasal drip, mucus draining down the back of the throat, and that leads to frequent throat clearing or that scratchy, irritated feeling. And what a lot of people don't realize is that histamine from that mucus can travel to the gut, causing bloating, nausea, or loss of appetite. Allergies aren't just a head thing, they can hit the whole digestive system. And finally, there's the fatigue, that worn out, foggy feeling during allergy season. That is your immune system in overdrive. So let's talk about what's actually happening during an allergic response. Normally, harmless things like pollen or dust get flagged as threats by the immune system in someone with allergic rhinitis. The body creates IgE antibodies, which tag the intruder and alert immune cells, and then come in the mast cells releasing histamine, which triggers a whole cascade of inflammation. And here's the key: the symptoms aren't the problem, they're your body's response. It's trying to flush the irritant out. And then histamine draws water to the area, causing swelling and mucus production. And that's what gives you the watery eyes, runny nose, postnasal drip, and congestion. In people who have narrow nasal passages, it doesn't take much for things to clog up fast, leading to mouth breathing, brain fog, and fatigue. And what's happening in the sinuses here is really similar to asthma or bronchitis. It's the same immune response, it's just happening higher up in the respiratory tract. So let's zoom in on seasonal allergic rhinitis, better known as hay fever. It's always triggered by pollen, and the type depends on the season. In spring, tree pollen is the big culprit. Some trees bloom, obviously, like fruit trees, but many have small, green, almost invisible flowers. They're easy to miss, but they release a lot of pollen. In summer and fall, the usual suspects for hay fever are going to be ragweed, one of the worst offenders, plantain, dandelion. Goldenrod is often blamed, but it's usually the ragweed that's growing nearby that's the real trigger. And for some people, it's not just one plant. Their immune system becomes generally reactive to airborne pollen, making allergy season feel endless. Now, beyond seasonal triggers, there's non seasonal allergic rhinitis, which I see in a lot of clients. One woman moved to a rural property with dusty, unpaved roads. Every time she worked outside, she'd end up congested, itchy, and even nauseated by bedtime. Her body treated that fine dust like a full blown allergen. Another client was sensitive to pet dander. She lived with multiple animals and had to keep her bedroom door shut all the time just to have a kind of a sanctuary to go to get relief. And some people react strongly to chemical irritants, not technically allergens, but still powerful triggers. Think perfume, cleaning products, and even laundry aisles at the store. Their sinuses shut down the moment they're exposed. These are all examples of what we call non allergic rhinitis. The reaction doesn't follow the typical IgE allergy pathway, but the inflammation and symptoms are just as real. Let's talk about postnasal drip. That's a super common complaint in people with chronic sinus issues. That thick drainage in the back of the throat is your body trying to flush out irritants or infection. But when the system's inflamed, mucus production ramps up. And instead of thin and helpful, it becomes thick and sticky and irritating. And this can lead to constant throat clearing, sore throats that keep coming back, a nagging cough if the drip irritates the lungs. And here's what most people don't know. Post nasal drainage is normal. It's how your body keeps the sinuses clear. The mucus and the cilia, those little fine hair-like projections, work together to move gunk toward the throat or lungs so it can be swallowed or cleared out. That's normal. It's only a problem when there's too much mucus or if the mucus is too thick to move properly. And that's where we're going to focus on thinning mucus, reducing inflammation, and helping the body drain things more efficiently so your throat and lungs can finally get some relief. Let's talk about what most people are prescribed for allergy symptoms, and those are antihistamines. These meds block histamine, so they do reduce symptoms like sneezing and runny nose, but they don't actually fix the root issue, and they can interfere with your body's natural clearing process. A client of mine was prescribed an antihistamine. It dried up her sinuses, yes, but she got constipated for a week, felt foggy and off. That's not exactly healing. And she's not alone. Common side effects of antihistamines are drowsiness, dizziness, headaches, dry mouth, and ironically, thicker mucus, which makes it harder to drain. The big picture, antihistamines block a chemical, histamine, that the body uses to move fluids and flush things out. So, yes, symptoms go down, but often at the cost of slower healing and more systemic stress. Now, there is a doctor that I learned about in nutrition school named Dr. Batman Geldish, and he became famous for a simple but powerful approach. His book was all about water. He believed that many chronic symptoms, especially sinus and mucus issues, are rooted in mild dehydration. And it makes sense. Mucus is up to 98% water. Same with tears, saliva, and sweat. So even if you're slightly dehydrated, mucus is going to thicken and it's going to get stuck instead of flowing. And that's when you feel foggy, congested, and inflamed. But he also stressed that we all need salt too, mineral rich sea salt or Himalayan pink salt or Redmond real salt, as we're all used to, not processed table salt, because we lose salt through sweat, tears, and even mucus. So I've had clients who tried this when sinus pressure started creeping in. They drink a big glass of water with a pinch of Celtic sea salt, and within 30 to 60 minutes, the mucus thinned, pressure eased, and symptoms cleared. No meds needed. Sometimes the simplest remedies are the most powerful. And I'm going to take a sip of my remedy right now. Practice what I preach there. All right. There are plenty of natural antihistamines, natural options to support the body during a histamine response. You don't always have to reach for conventional antihistamines. Years ago, formulas often used ephedra, very effective for sinus pressure and asthma. Unfortunately, it was pulled from the market due to misuse in weight loss and stimulant products. When it's used properly, though, it was incredibly helpful. A gentler relative to ephedra is Mormon tea or Brigham tea, which still grows in the Western US. It's a mild decongestant with light antihistamine properties, not as strong, but still very supportive. Another option is bitter orange peel, which contains synephrine, one of the products I'm going to be showing you about near the end of the presentation tonight has the bitter orange in it with the naturally occurring synephrine in it. It's a natural compound that helps dry mucus and has a mild stimulant effect. Personally, I would use that cautiously, mostly for short-term relief when someone really needs to breathe better. But most of the time, I'm going to lean toward a supportive approach, calm the allergic response, hydrate, and help the body clear mucus naturally rather than just drying everything up. One of my favorite herbs for calming allergies is nettle leaf. And so nettle leaf is kind of a funny thing because stinging nettle out in the wild it causes an allergic reaction. Nettle actually contains histamine, and so you would think that might be contraindicated here. If you brush up against nettle out in the wild, the histamine, there's formic acid in there, like is what is in ant bites and other natural irritants in the plant's hair. It's going to make you feel really itchy. So you would think that nettle would make allergies worse, but it does the opposite. Taken internally, nettle seems to desensitize mast cells, helping them stay calm and reduce the histamine response. It's a little bit of like homeopathy. A little bit of the effect helps to desensitize you from what's going on. The great thing also about nettle is it doesn't knock you out or dry you up. It just helps the immune system settle down in a gentle, reliable way. All right. Vitamin C is another great natural allergy support, but it doesn't work like a traditional antihistamine. Instead of blocking histamine, vitamin C helps your body break it down and clear it out after it's already been released. It's like the cleanup crew after the immune system responds. One of my clients loved gardening, but always reacted to the dust. So she started sipping an antioxidant rich lemonade while outside, water, lemon juice, a little maple syrup, and sometimes a splash of antioxidant juice or powdered vitamin C in there. So not only was she hydrating, like we were talking about before, but she was also cooling the immune response. It helped reduce the allergy flare ups that she used to get the evening after she would go outside and garden. And so that combo of hydration and antioxidants and vitamin C turns out to be a simple, effective strategy for some people. Another helpful compound for allergy support is quercetin. That's about bioflavonoid that helps to stabilize mast cells, making them less reactive and less likely to dump histamine at the first trigger. In nature, vitamin C and quercetin are often paired together. You'll find them side by side in many fruits and vegetables. And that combo, that the Lord knew what he was doing there, works beautifully in the body too. So, foods that are high in both vitamin C and quercetin are going to be red onions, apples, grapes, berries, and cherries. The antioxidant drink that I was talking about before worked partly because it had apple and grape extracts in it that are great natural sources of quercetin. Also, mangosteen is found in some antioxidant blends, and that brings in a compound called xanthones, which helps to calm inflammation and allergic reactions. Also, don't forget elderberries. They're not just antiviral, they also have a mild anti allergy effect and naturally contain quercetin as well. So, when you combine antioxidant rich fruits, vitamin C, and plenty of hydration, it just creates this powerful way to cool the system and support healthy immune regulation. Many people know eye bright for eye support. Makes sense, but it actually helps the entire upper respiratory tract. Traditionally used as an eye wash, it's mildly astringent or drying, so it's going to gently dry and tone tissues, and that makes it really great for watery, itchy eyes and runny noses. And what's great is that eye bright seems to calm allergic responses system wide: eyes, nose, ears, and throat. So you could call it an ENT doctor in a plant. It's especially helpful when there's swelling in the eustachian tubes, itchy, watery eyes, sinus pressure, and post-nasal drip irritating the throat. A great combo, if you can find it, would have eyebright, nettle leaf, and goldenrod. Is going to be a powerful herbal trio for a lot of allergy flare-ups. All right, other herbs for allergic rhinitis. Just looking at goldenrod might make you feel allergic, but these are a few more that are really good for seasonal allergies. So goldenrod is great for pet dander sensitivities, especially cat hair. It helps calm that histamine response around our furry friends. Burdock is known for gentle liver support, but it also helps to stabilize mast cells, making it a great choice for reducing allergic reactivity overall. Ragweed sounds crazy. But it's also known as ambrosia out there. Like if somebody was looking for an allergy remedy and it said ragweed on it, they might not buy it. And so instead it would say ambrosia at the store. But ragweed is the plant that everyone blames for allergies, but it's actually used as an herb. And in small internal doses, it can help to desensitize the body, similar to how metal works. And then yerba santa is a go-to for thick plugged up sinuses. It helps break up stuck mucus and open the airways. All of these herbs work best when you're well hydrated. Again, if your system's dry, mucus can't move and herbs can't circulate. So keep the water coming and add a pinch of sea salt to help it actually get into the tissues. Hang on. Okay. Let's talk about homeopathy because it doesn't get nearly enough credit. One of my teachers was talking about years ago in Utah, someone started collecting local pollens from spring, summer, and fall and made them into some homeopathic remedies. Really low dose, like a gentle whisper to the immune system. And the goal is to calm the overreaction, not suppress it. So this guy created 3 seasonal blends and they were really effective, kind of like a mini vaccine, but far gentler, of course. If you're the DIY type or know a local homeopath, you can even have remedies made from pollen or dander in your region. And that's a personalized, smart approach to desensitization. There are, as I was mentioning, homeopathic remedies for animal dander, which is great for people who want to keep their pets but reduce symptoms. So, whether the trigger is pollen, dander, or something else, homeopathy is a gentle way to retrain the immune system to get it from a shout down to a whisper. So, there are some common over the counter homeopathic allergy remedies. You can find these at Whole Foods, natural grocers, or Amazon. Bo Iron, Highlands, Aloys are good brands. There's Allium cepa for a runny nose, sneezing, watery onions. Think onion like symptoms because Allium cepa is homeopathy of an onion. Sabadilla for sneezing fits and itchy throat. Natrum muriaticum. I practiced that before. I still didn't get it right. For postnasal drip and headaches from sinus pressure. Wyethia for roof of the mouth itching and dry throat. Histaminum hydrochloricum, general antihistamine support in homeopathic form. It's histamine in homeopathic form. Pulsatilla for thick mucus, especially in children. And then there are the mixed pollen or regional blends that we'll talk about in a second. And then sometimes the companies will do these in combination remedies. So like Bo Iron has Rhine Allergy, Allergy Calm. Washington Homeopathics has something called hay fever and sinus congestion, and that's going to bundle a few of the common remedies into one formula. And as I was researching for all of this, I found this company called Allergina, and they have these remedies, just like I was talking about, in zones. So, if you go to their website, you find your zone there. And then I was looking in zone 2 because I'm going to be speaking in Alabama, and that was pretty well covering zone 2. And I live at the tippy top of 2 right there in southern Indiana. So I think a lot of our stuff is going to be, Kentucky. So I figured 2 might do. But when I looked at this, look at all of the tree pollen that they have included here in zone 2, and then all of the weeds and grass pollen that they have included in zone 2, in this liquid homeopathic remedy that you would put under your tongue. And you can find it on Amazon. It's got good reviews. I want to say it was about $27. And so that's kind of fun. And they've got them formulated for children as well. I was afraid I was going to look it up and people were going to say, nah, it doesn't work. But, I think it had like 4.6 stars on Amazon. And so it's something I just learned about today. And I'm kind of excited about being able to tell people about it. All right. And then bee pollen and honey. So, another natural way to calm the body's response to seasonal allergens is bee pollen. And this works especially well for hay fever, that classical seasonal allergic rhinitis triggered by environmental pollen. Think of bee pollen as a tiny controlled exposure to the very thing that's causing the problem, but in a way that can build tolerance over time. The key is to start small. Bee pollen comes in, these little classic golden granules. So I usually recommend starting with just 2 to 3 grains of it a day. And if that feels okay, you can slowly work up to more. Some people eventually take a few capsules of it every day. Now, local pollen is best because it's going to contain pollens from plants in your specific environment, and that's what's going to help your immune system adjust best. If bee pollen is not your thing, you could try local raw honey. You want unfiltered, raw, unpasteurized honey that's going to contain traces of pollen, and that small spoonful a day may offer some gentle desensitization over time. Of course, the more region specific the source, the better the potential for long-term relief. Let's shift gears and talk about sinusitis. So we've been talking about rhinitis up to now, and now let's talk about sinusitis because it's not just allergies that mess with your breathing. Sinusitis happens when the sinus cavities, those hollow spaces in your head, get inflamed. Some people say these hollow spaces help with voice resonance, which is kind of neat, but mostly they're just supposed to stay open and clear. But when they don't stay open and clear, when they swell or get blocked, you get postnasal drip, facial pressure behind the eyes, cheeks, or forehead, blocked breathing, even pain behind the ears. So, and have you also ever noticed how food tastes bland when you're stuffed up? That's because most of your sense of taste comes from smell. And if air isn't moving through your sinuses, flavor falls flat. Add in ear pressure, sore throats, coughing, even bad breath. And it's no wonder when people have sinusitis, they feel foggy, tired, and just off. And the kicker, it often starts with just a little swelling. So let's break down sinusitis because it really shows up in two main forms, acute and chronic, and both often involve some kind of infection. Acute sinusitis usually follows a cold or viral bug, and you can often guess the cause just by looking at the color of your mucus. Clear or white, likely viral, yellow or green, that's your immune system sending neutrophils or specialized white blood cells to fight off bacteria. Chronic sinusitis is more complicated. It can be bacterial, but not always. An example of this would be a dental infection or an abscessed tooth, and that can actually send bacteria upward into the sinuses, and that's more common than people think. But here's the key, many people with chronic sinus issues, especially if they've had multiple rounds of antibiotics, aren't dealing with bacteria anymore. The real issue becomes fungal. Why? Because antibiotics wipe out the body's good microbes, throwing the sinus microbiome out of balance. Yeast takes over, yuck, and now more antibiotics just make it worse. And that's why so many people hit a wall with conventional treatment. They're still treating bacteria when the real problem is fungal overgrowth. So here's something that really caught my attention. A Mayo Clinic study found that 96% of people with sinusitis, both acute and chronic, actually had these fungal infections in their sinuses. So let that sink in. Think about how often antibiotics are prescribed for sinus issues, and it starts to make sense. Those antibiotics knock out the beneficial bacteria, creating the perfect environment for fungi to thrive. And when you have chronic fungal overgrowth, it's like pouring gas on a fire. You've got more inflammation, more mucus, and more sinus misery. And this can completely shift how we think about root causes and why conventional treatments so often fall short. They just keep throwing antibiotics at the problem. So let's talk a little more about mucus because, yes, the color can actually tell you something about what's going on. Quick breakdown, clear, thin, and watery. That's your body's first line of defense. It's trying to flush out a virus or an irritant before it settles in. If it's white and thick, that's a sign of irritation or an early viral response, and the body is starting to mobilize against something. If it's yellow or green, that means the immune system is engaged. And those colors come from neutrophils, those white blood cells that show up to fight infection, whether viral or bacterial. And if the mucus is brown, that's usually older, dried out mucus that's been sitting around for too long, or could be a little bit of blood. Your mucus is like your body's status report. And if you can learn to read it, it can tell you a lot. All right, so let's talk about something that people often brush off, snoring. It might seem harmless or just annoying, but it's actually a red flag for upper airway congestion. Snoring usually means restricted airflow often from swollen sinuses, a narrowed throat, or a tongue shifting back during sleep. And the noisy breathing is the sound of air forcing its way through inflamed tissues. And it's not just about the annoying sound that keeps people awake. Snoring can mean that the body's not getting enough oxygen, that carbon dioxide isn't clearing well, that the brain and heart have to stay on high alert when they should be resting. And left unchecked, this can lead to sleep apnea, where the airway temporarily closes. The person briefly wakes up, often without remembering, but these micro arousals all night add up to poor sleep, fatigue, and added cardiovascular stress. So, yes, snoring matters. If we're working on inflammation, sinus support, and better breathing, this is an important part of the healing puzzle and also can help make marriages happier. So, up to this point, we've mostly talked about symptom relief, tools that help calm things down in the moment. And don't get me wrong, that's important. When someone's miserable, they need to breathe again and quickly. But one thing stands out: hydration. It doesn't just mask symptoms, it supports the body's natural ability to flush, restore, and repair. So that is, some temporary relief and also a root cause thing, all combined. So, taking it a step further now, we're going to talk about root causes. What's actually driving the inflammation? Why is the immune system reacting in the first place? This is where the shift happens from just managing symptoms to long term healing. And that's where real transformation begins. And I've got a couple of slides out of order. So, I've got to jump to this one and then I'll have to go back. All right. We want to correct the root causes of sinus problems, because it's never just a sinus problem. There's the gut sinus connection. Sinus inflammation often mirrors gut inflammation, especially in the colon. If the GI tract is inflamed, it tends to show up in the sinuses too. Leaky gut. A compromised gut lining triggers systemic inflammation, including in the respiratory tract. Healing the gut helps calm the sinuses. Food sensitivities like dairy, gluten, and processed junk foods may not cause a full blown allergy, but still drive inflammation and excess mucus. And temporarily removing them can bring some fast sinus relief. We've talked about candida and yeast and fungus. A yeast overgrowth, that a post antibiotic candida overgrowth happens to a lot of people and is a major trigger. Supporting the body with antifungals and rebuilding the gut flora with probiotics is crucial. Sluggish lymph. Your lymphatic system is key for drainage. And if your lymph is backed up, you'll feel it in both your gut and your sinuses. Support it with hydration, movement, vibration plates, and lymph moving herbs. Hydration, keep banging this drum. A dry body equals thick, sticky mucus. Water keeps it thin and flowing so your body can actually clear it. Natural expectorants and decongestants can support the cilia, your sinus sweepers, and help move mucus out, reducing pain and pressure. There are some direct sinus therapies like nasal irrigation, steam inhalation, or essential oils that can reduce infection, support healing, and even shrink nasal polyps. And then there are some emotional roots to sinus problems that can reflect unresolved grief or sadness. Supporting emotional release and nervous system regulation is often the missing link, and we're going to talk about each of these in turn. Um, I think this one is out of place, but we will just cover it right now anyway. So let's talk about respiratory irritants, because this one's sneaky. It's not always about what you eat or supplement. Sometimes it's about what you're breathing in all day. So I've had clients, especially house cleaners, see major improvements just by switching to non-toxic cleaning products. Less sinus irritation, better breathing, and real results just from a simple switch there. Even if you've already made that switch, don't forget everyday exposures like dust, fumes, pollution, sanding wood, sweeping out garages. Wear a mask if you're doing that. Poor air quality, think about an air purifier. Even changing your furnace filter regularly can help. Bottom line, cleaner air will equal less inflammation, especially if you're dealing with chronic sinus issues or non allergic rhinitis. So, as we were talking about, the gut and the sinuses are deeply connected. In traditional Chinese medicine, both the lungs and large intestine are part of the metal element, which reflects how reactivity in the gut often mirrors in the sinuses. One woman I worked with had constant congestion, postnasal drip, and earaches, and she tried all the allergy meds, but nothing really helped. So, we looked at her food triggers, and she was eating a lot of wheat and dairy, common things that we want to eliminate. And those are two big inflammatory foods. We pulled them out for a few weeks and her symptoms cleared up. No more daily congestion, and her under eye circles lightened too. Why? Because her gut was inflamed and her mast cells were on high alert. That hypersensitivity wasn't just in her GI tract, it was showing up in her sinuses too. So once we calmed her gut, her respiratory symptoms faded. So if someone's dealing with rhinitis, sinusitis, asthma, or a chronic cough, don't overlook the gut. Sometimes the fastest way to clear the sinuses is by changing what's on your plate. How do you spot food sensitivities that affect the sinuses? You don't always need fancy testing. Sometimes the body speaks clearly. You just need to know what to watch for. One client noticed that when her son reacted to dairy within 15 to 30 minutes of ingesting it, he had glazed eyes, puffiness, redness, and even dark circles under his eyes. That's classic allergy face, especially common in kids. Other signs could be flushed cheeks, swelling, or a spacey, dazed look. So there are a few ways to clue in. We've talked during restart about the Coca's pulse test. So you can check your pulse, take it before and after holding a bite of the suspected food in your mouth, and then an increase in your pulse from 6 to 10 beats a minute can signal a reaction. Notice mood shifts. Sometimes people get cranky, brain fog, or feeling off, and those are subtle signs of a food sensitivity. Cravings can be clues. We talked about that in restart as well. So, the foods that you can't live without are sometimes the very ones causing inflammation. And then you want to try to rotate your foods. Eating the same foods every day, like peanut butter toast, for example, can wear down your tolerance and set you up for sensitivities over time. So, the takeaway here is pay attention. Your body's giving you feedback. It just might not speak in the symptoms that you expect. And it's not just dairy and wheat. For some people, sinus congestion isn't just about gluten or casein. Other common food triggers include corn, eggs, citrus fruits, peanut butter, shellfish, soy, and even food additives or preservatives. It doesn't always show up as a full blown allergy. Sometimes it's just a sensitivity. Your body doesn't like something, and that can show up in your sinuses. So if somebody's stuck in a cycle of inflammation, congestion, and sinus symptoms, it's worth doing some food detective work. Identifying and removing those triggers can make a huge difference. Fermented foods. It could be helpful to come off fermented foods if someone is in the middle of an allergy attack. Histamine producing foods can aggravate it. So it would be fermented vegetables, fermented dairy, fermented soy products, fermented drinks, fermented fish and meats, even leftovers are increasing in histamine the longer that they're in the fridge. So you would want to freeze leftovers if you are in the middle of an allergy attack. And then histamine releasing foods like spinach, eggplant, tomatoes, bananas, avocados, strawberries, pineapple, citrus fruits, kiwi, mango. Those are histamine releasing or histamine promoting foods that you may want to avoid if you're in the middle of a full blown allergy attack. And apples, also, they're, I think, a member of the birch family. And so if somebody is allergic to birch trees, apples, and especially with the peel on, are going to be more histamine producing than peeled apples, or just stay away from apples if that's an issue. Right. Thought that was some important information. Want to get to the bottom of food triggers. Let your body tell you, as we've been talking about a little, but one of the most effective tools is a short elimination trial or a reset style fast. No guessing, just observation. So there are a few options. A simple elimination diet, remove the common triggers, wheat, dairy, eggs, soy, corn for 2 to 3 weeks. You could do a short fast, 24 to 48 hours on water, and master cleanse kind of drinks, or fresh veggie juice is going to be gentler than fruit juice, or a gentle food reset where you're just having fresh veggies and fruits for a few days. Even that can bring some noticeable relief for people. And then you want to reintroduce one food at a time, one ingredient per meal. For example, a slice of toast on its own, or just a glass of milk, and then pay attention. Do your sinuses clog up? Do you feel a dip in energy? Do you get brain fog? That's your body talking. So here's the magic that I've told clients in the past. Say, for example, if they want to fight me on a whole bunch of eliminations, cut dairy for 2 weeks. No forever commitment. Just eliminate dairy for 2 weeks, and then you can have all the ice cream you want. So it's a little bit of a trick. They cut out the dairy, they feel better, then they reintroduce it and they feel awful. It's clarity, from their own body. And so they're teaching themselves a lesson there. And that's when real healing can begin, when you reconnect to that inner feedback loop. You eat something, it does you bad, and you decide, I'm not going to eat that anymore, or at least not as often. So let's talk about a lesser known trigger, salicylates. I had a client with asthma, sinus congestion, and recurring nasal polyps, and nothing brought lasting relief until we discovered that she had a salicylate sensitivity. Salicylates are aspirin like compounds found in many raw fruits, veggies, herbs, and even natural remedies like willow bark. And here's the twist, when these foods are picked early for shipping, as they often are with our supply chain system here, salicylate levels rise when they're picked early. So pair that with the artificial additives in our food supply, and you've got a recipe for chronic inflammation in sensitive people. So for this client, removing artificial food additives and cutting down on high salicylate foods helped her sinuses, breathing, and overall inflammation. Salicylate sensitivity can show up in kids as behavioral changes or hyperactivity. So, if you're seeing mystery symptoms in kids, especially sinus related, don't overlook the salicylates here. So, common high salicylate foods are fruits like strawberries, blueberries, raspberries, grapes, apples, oranges, cherries, and tomatoes. Sad. Um, Vegetables and herbs like oh, there's Carol. Vegetables and herbs like spinach, zucchini, eggplant, broccoli, peppers, cucumber with skin, alfalfa sprouts, herbs and spices like curry powder, turmeric, thyme, rosemary, oregano, paprika, mint, cinnamon, cloves. Some nuts like almonds, peanuts, and then possibly honey and vinegar, especially balsamic vinegar and apple cider vinegar, and drinks like green and black tea, coffee, fruit juice, and wine. And you look at this list and you're like, well, what the heck am I going to eat? And so hopefully, I hate to identify histamine intolerance in a client, and I would hate to identify salicylate sensitivity in a client, because that would really narrow your food and make you feel, really restricted and sad and mad and all the bad emotions if you had to keep your eye on eliminating all of these things. But it's just something to look at. Or like I was saying, with the ones that are picked early for shipping, if you are going to source these things more locally, and you're a little bit closer to the farmer, and you're getting them fresher from the fields, then maybe that wouldn't be as much of a problem. So let's talk about some natural alternatives. I'm going to get a drink of water. All right, so what's really going to be important is reducing systemic inflammation. Allergies and sinusitis involve inflammatory responses, so remedies that can reduce inflammation may be helpful. When your system is inflamed, your respiratory tract feels it too. So when we calm inflammation across the board, it's a really effective and important way to relieve sinus and allergy symptoms, as well as inflammation everywhere else. So what are great would be vitamin C. We talked about that earlier. That can help break down histamine and support the immune response. Vitamins A and D are essential for mucosal barrier integrity and immune modulation. And we have all of these mucosal barriers around our body, sinuses especially. MSM is a natural sulfur compound that calms inflammation and supports detox pathways. Curcumin from turmeric is great for both joint pain and sinus pressure. I think that there's hardly anything that turmeric isn't good for. CoQ10 supports cellular energy and helps reduce inflammation systemically. And I think about the number of people who get put on statins who don't also end up taking CoQ10 as well. And so, those statins are depleting the body of CoQ10. And so that is depleting them of cellular energy and increasing systemic inflammation. Mangosteen, some people, have drinks out there or supplements with mangosteen with the xanthones in there. And that is a potent antioxidant that supports sinus, immune, and overall inflammatory balance. And if somebody has joint pain and sinus congestion, something like curcumin or MSM can be a really great 2-for-1 solution. So that's a big win. And they could also benefit from antioxidant drinks like mangosteen, grape, apple, and berry concentrates those are great broad spectrum options. And we were talking about those, like, that woman who was out working in her garden, and she had, water and salt and these antioxidant drinks that were helping her body to deal with the histamine response when she was outside. So here's something important to understand. Gut health and respiratory health are deeply connected. And we've been talking about this all along, but when there's gut dysbiosis or an imbalance in friendly microbes, intestinal inflammation, constipation, or a compromised gut lining, aka leaky gut, it doesn't just stay in the GI tract. It can absolutely impact the lungs and sinuses. In traditional Chinese medicine, I think I had mentioned earlier, both the colon and the lungs are under the metal element, which is tied to the body's ability to protect itself and defend itself. And that makes sense. So when the gut is struggling, the respiratory system often shows signs too, like congestion, coughing, or sinus issues. So a simple step would be to try a gentle colon cleanse or make sure to support healthy elimination. Often clearing out waste and calming gut inflammation can bring unexpected relief to upper respiratory symptoms. And that's a great example of why it's important to always consider the whole system, not just isolated symptoms. That rising tide raises all boats. And so it's good to start with a good colon cleanse if this is something that you think is a problem. I had a client who dealt with chronic sinus congestion for years, and nothing brought long-term relief until we started working on gut health. We added fiber, cleaned up her diet with more veggies, supported digestion, and within weeks, her sinuses began to clear. No more pressure, no more brain fog, no more postnasal drip. And it worked because issues like leaky gut and dysbiosis can trigger immune sensitivity, especially in the upper respiratory tract. So when that gut lining is inflamed, undigested proteins get into the bloodstream. It can trigger histamine and inflammation in places like the sinuses. When I work with people who have histamine intolerance, leaky gut is always at play. So you heal the gut and you calm the immune system. So this client doing a gentle colon cleanse, digestive support, better food choices made all the difference. And that can be a missing link for people stuck in this cycle of allergy meds and sinus infections. So there is a standard process 10-day detox balance program. There's an unflavored one and there's a chai flavored one, which I think is delightful. And that's a great simple program. It's just this shake that you do for 10 days. You're allowed to eat other food. So it's not just the shake, and it's nice. Denny and I've done it several times, and that one drop shipped is $100.65 and $12 shipping and handling. And I like to put the money out there because if you're thinking, oh, that sounds like a great idea, wonder how much it is. You don't have to wonder because I put it on the slide. All right, treating chronic fungal infections. And so there's a high prevalence. Over 90% of chronic sinusitis cases have some level of fungal overgrowth in the sinuses. And we talked about that earlier. And that antibiotic link, people who have been on multiple rounds of antibiotics, then this creates the perfect environment for yeasts like Candida to flourish. I know people who'll get on antibiotics and it's pretty well guaranteed they're going to get a yeast infection afterwards. Um, so, um, so you might want to
Dr.
consider.
Jen,
Yes, ma'am.
I discovered several years ago if you have a good probiotic, every time you take that antibiotic pill, you take a probiotic with it and it will stave off said yeast infection.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. A lot of times, I mean, we haven't taken antibiotics in a long, long time, but I would often like run by the health food store and pick up a P pack to go with the Z pack. And it would, a short term, nice little probiotic to go along with it. But if somebody's got, this kind of entrenched, potentially candida going on, a candida clearing program, Cellcore has one that's the CA support kit. It's a little spendy, but I know Cellcore is serious about their stuff, and so that is about 310, and then they charge $8 for shipping and handling, and I can get that drop shipped to you if that's something you wanted to try. But a balanced gut is key, and clearing this out, and then having good fiber-rich foods also will feed the good bacteria and create an environment where yeast can't thrive. All right. Improve lymphatic drainage. This is a really important one too. So consider somebody with chronic sinus congestion, pressure, drainage, puffiness that just won't go away. And here's a theory I often come back to. The lymphatic system may actually use the mucous membranes in the gut, lungs, and sinuses as elimination pathways. So here's how this works. When the colon is regularly emptied, it creates a kind of vacuum effect that allows the lymph to drain downward from the head through the body into the bowels for elimination. But if someone is congested or not eliminating well, that pressure builds in the colon, and now the lymph has nowhere to go. It gets backed up like a clogged drain. And what do you see? Sinus congestion, facial puffiness, fluid retention, and that heavy, sluggish feeling. So sometimes sinus symptoms aren't a sinus problem, they're a drainage problem. So that's why I always come back to banging that drum, hydration, gentle movement, bowel support, and lymph moving herbs. One client's sinus issues cleared dramatically once we got elimination moving and lymph flowing. That congestion melted away because the system was finally draining properly. So there are some great herbal combos for internal sinus support, especially for pressure, headaches, or that stuck congested feeling. So fenugreek and thyme is one of the best combos for breaking up congestion and easing sinus pressure. That's, excuse me, a go-to formula for that heavy, stuffy feeling. Horseradish, if you've ever had it with prime rib or wasabi at a sushi bar, you know that feeling, that zap up the sinuses, makes your eyes water. That horseradish is opening things up fast, and that clears mucus like nothing else. Burdock helps stabilize mast cells, making it great for calming allergic reactions that trigger sinus flare ups. Golden seal and berberine. Berberine is the active component in golden seal, and that's antibacterial, antifungal, and astringent. So it's drying and can help dry up stubborn mucus and support lingering inflammation. Golden seal and echinacea together is a powerful pair. The berberine that I mentioned before is fighting infection, and echinacea is stimulating the immune system, and that's especially helpful for long-standing or recurring sinus infections. And then I mentioned the bitter orange peel earlier. It's a milder alternative to ephedra with natural decongestant properties and a bit of a metabolic kick, and it helps clear the airways while energizing the system. Yes, Bella.
Isn't berberine the one we use to help with blood sugar issues?
Mhm. It has so many benefits. Yeah, it's
Sounds
great
like it.
for gut and it's great for blood sugar. Mhm.
Thank you.
Welcome. Um, And of course, with all of these things being mentioned, I'm going to say it again: hydrate, hydrate, hydrate. Water helps thin mucus, supports drainage, and makes everything we just talked about work better. Dehydration is a sneaky reason why mucus gets stuck in the first place. So, whether you're going herbal, spices, or both, don't skip the water. Your sinuses will thank you, as will your bowels, as will your headaches. I had this woman, she wanted at my work job, she wanted to quit because she was having a headache and she was constipated. And she was only 2 weeks in and she thought she was going to be all better in 2 weeks, but she had only had 2 cups of water for the past several days, and she doesn't like to drink water. And so, but everything was my fault because she was constipated and had a headache and dehydrated. I don't know how that was my fault. And then she got mad because we told her to drink more water. Can't skip the water. All right, so I've come to believe that what expectorant and decongestant herbs do is really support how the body moves water. And I keep talking about water, but that's the key to clearing out mucus. So think about it, these expectorant and decongestant herbs, laxatives pull water into the colon to soften stools. Diuretics send water to the kidneys to flush toxins. Sudorifics, sweat inducing herbs, move water to the skin, and decongestants send water to the mucous membranes, thinning mucus so it can drain. But here's the catch. And I'm a broken record. If you're dehydrated, your body has to borrow water from somewhere else. You might thin out mucus, but you'll create imbalances elsewhere, robbing Peter to pay Paul. Expectorants go a step further. Once the mucus is thinned, they stimulate the cilia, those little sweepers in your sinuses and lungs, to move it out. So the winning formula: hydration is essential, herbs are strategic, and together they support your body's natural ability to clear and drain. Let's talk some essential oils. This is a simple but powerful tool for sinus relief. A lot of clients get great results just by sniffing essential oils straight from the bottle, like Ravensara, pine, eucalyptus. Take a whiff anytime your sinuses start acting up. But when you're dealing with serious congestion, the steam method is gold. And so you would want to boil some water and put it in a pan, add about 10 drops of essential oil. Eucalyptus and pine are great options. Drape a towel over your head, like this young man here, like a little tent, and lean over the steam, and then breathe deeply and let the warm, moist air carry the oils into your sinuses and lungs. That's going to help to loosen mucus, kill infection, and honestly, it just feels really good. Old school, yes. Effective, absolutely. And then steam inhalation, one of the best at home tools for sinus support. It's simple, safe, incredibly effective for opening up the sinuses and getting things moving. Some clients have even told me that just sitting in a steam room at the gym helped them breathe better again when they were congested. If you don't have access to one, you can DIY it at home, just like we were talking about on the previous slide, and then you could add the essential oils to it for a bonus there. You can use nasal irrigation. It's usually got to be pretty bad if I'm going to use a neti pot, because they always make me feel like I'm drowning. But you can help to clear a sinus infection with this or a bulb syringe, like I'll show you next. But that's one of the most effective tools, are nasal rinses or sprays. So you would want to fill the neti pot with warm water and a half teaspoon to a teaspoon of salt. Lean over the sink, tilt your head to the side, pour the solution into the top nostril, and it flows out the bottom, flushing out the sinus cavity. And this is mimicking what your body wants to do naturally when you're well hydrated and electrolyte balanced. You're just giving it a boost. If you want to level it up, you can add a tablespoon of colloidal silver to your rinse, but not the salt. I'll talk about that in just a second. So just colloidal silver to the water that has antimicrobial properties. If you don't have a neti pot, you can use a baby bulb syringe, like I was showing you there. Same method, fill, tilt, and flush. For people with chronic sinus issues, working systematically with gut and diet support is key, but sometimes you do need to go straight to the source. And that's where these local therapies like nasal irrigation and targeted essential oil applications can come in. They're not just for temporary relief, they can flush excess mucus, reduce inflammation, stimulate the cilia, and even help to shrink nasal polyps. So if you're stuck in this cycle of sinus infections or congestion, a local sinus support like this can be a game changer while you're also doing deeper healing underneath. Yes, Bella.
Nettie has a bottle now. It
Mm-hmm.
holds more than the baby syringe and actually does a better job.
Hmm.
That is more tolerable than the pot because you get to keep your head straight.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's also a product that's in a can under pressure called Air, that
Okay.
is saline water that you can do. And I'm like you, I have to be in bad shape to do any of those because Water does not belong up my nose.
Right. Yeah, and I even at one point I got a Navage because I had seen great things about it, but I blew out an eardrum using my Navage, and so I'm a little afraid to use it again. But I was always impressed with the mucus that it pulled out of there. But it's this battery powered thing that's shooting saline into your sinuses, and it's vacuuming it out the other side. But I had all this pressure build up in my ears when I was doing it, and I blew an eardrum, and it was no fun. And so I'm scared of it by now. And Connie got a nasal mister. So talking about the bulb syringe, and also, you've may have heard there have been reports about nasal rinsing being unsafe. That when you do it properly, it's not a problem. You're just washing your sinuses with salt water, which is naturally microbial, and that salt water is already part of your body's mucus makeup. So you're working with the body, not against it. If you have a deviated septum or significant congestion, full flow through might not happen at first. That's okay. Start with an anti-inflammatory nasal spray or an herbal formula to shrink swollen tissue and then rinse. Even partial flow can help reduce swelling and kickstart drainage. Here is something that I recommend a lot. Um, Connie, you want to explain the nasal mister? It's probably better than a nasal misses. Haha. Okay, well, we'll get to that. But nausea is a gentle Ayurvedic remedy and one of my favorite tools for long-term sinus care. I recommend it for clients dealing with dry sinuses, chronic congestion, that feeling of being mentally foggy or stuck in your head. Nausea oil is applied with just a drop or two in each nostril. It lubricates the nasal passages, supports nasal drainage, and helps reduce inflammation. I will usually just put a drop or two on my pinky and rub it around in my nostril and then snort up the rest of it. And it's really good. And Connie's showing off my Pure Mist. Oh, okay. So it's like a neti pot on like a battery operated neti pot, right?
I think you plug it in.
Oh, okay.
It's just a vapor. It makes a vapor and it will fit right over your nose.
Oh, okay. Nifty. That sounds nice. When people have used nausea, and it's nausea, not nausea, but nausea, they often breathe easier at night, feel clearer in the morning, and even feel more emotionally grounded. And in Ayurvedic medicine, the nose is considered a direct channel to the brain and mind. It makes sense. It's right there. So nurturing this area can support mental clarity, emotional regulation, and better sleep. Nausea is especially helpful in dry seasons, or if you tend to wake up feeling stuffy or foggy. It's a great addition to any sinus support protocol. And you can order that from Full Script for $16.99. Silver Shield is another great tool for your natural sinus care toolbox. It's a gentle but powerful option for fighting infection, especially in chronic or recurring sinus issues. But don't mix Silver Shield with water with salt water, because salt will cause the silver to precipitate out, basically deactivating it. So it would be worthless to do it. So if you're using Silver Shield in a neti pot or the bulb syringe or something like that, just use the colloidal silver, the Silver Shield, and don't use any salt in that water. So you could mix a half teaspoon to a full teaspoon of Silver Shield in a cup of clean, filtered, or distilled water, and put that in your neti pot or nasal syringe, or put it in a spray bottle. This one, comes in a spray bottle where you can spray it right up in your nostrils, and so that allows the silver to make direct contact with the sinus tissue, helping to kill unwanted microbes. So that is a great go-to for stubborn sinus infections, ongoing congestion, or if you want extra antimicrobial support without disrupting your microbiome like antibiotics often do. And you can get that on Full Script for $15.99. All right, let's talk about enzymes, microbes, and mucus, because yes, it's all connected. When we're trying to clear up sinus chronic sinus issues, supporting digestion is a key piece of the puzzle. We talked about that some already. One client had a major breakthrough when we added digestive enzymes, especially with protein heavy meals. We used a blend with hydrochloric acid and bromelain from pineapple. And that helped to support the gut terrain by helping her to break down food. And so working on leaky gut and working on properly breaking down food can do a lot of great stuff. So there are some other things. You eliminate unfriendly microbes with berberine, cinnamon, golden seal, or pal d'arco. Eliminate simple carbohydrates, especially refined sugar, because that's just going to feed the bad bugs. And then take both Bacillus coagulans or other probiotics to help keep the gut healthy. So if you're chasing down the root cause of chronic sinus issues, don't forget to look south to the gut. Now, some clients with chronic postnasal drip, sinus congestion, or even deep lung issues may actually be carrying an emotional root, especially unprocessed grief. In traditional Chinese medicine, that metal element that governs the lungs and large intestine is deeply affected by grief. And there's a quote, when we don't cry outwardly, the body cries inwardly. And sometimes that can show up as lingering mucus, constant drainage, and recurring respiratory infections. And that might be somebody who experienced loss or heartache but never fully processed it. Maybe they stayed busy. Maybe they felt they had to be strong, and their sinus or lung symptoms linger until they finally allow themselves to feel and release. And that's why someone with long-term sinus or respiratory symptoms could ask themselves, is there anything I haven't allowed myself to feel? And is there grief that I'm holding in my body? If the answer is yes, I recommend flower essences like this that I've put in there called Grief Relief. They don't push or force your emotions. They simply support the heart and nervous system as you begin to heal from within. And so, there are all these individual flower remedies, and then there's Rescue Remedy by Bach. But this is one that I found that is available on Amazon called Grief Relief. And I don't remember how much that one is, but that might help. And then a few things that I wanted to recommend. We've got this Gaia Corset and Synergy, and that one's a little spendy. It's $64 from Full Script, and you could order it. I think it's almost out, or maybe that one's on back order. A lot of people are ordering that stuff right now, or I can get it drop shipped to you from Gaia. And that's got 500 milligrams of quercetin and 250 milligrams of vitamin C, manganese, bromelain from pineapple, turmeric, and those citrus bioflavonoids. And that's intended to support mast cells, which when degranulated release histamine. And so that is a really great product for that. We've got Gaia Sinus Comfort, and that's Full Script, or I can get it to you from Gaia. And that is respiratory and immune support to promote healthy sinuses. Yarrow is drying, plantain, bayberry, and nettle. And that's great support during seasonal transitions. It's got an alcohol water base, and that one it works really quickly. As I was learning. Gaia Stinging Nettle Leaf, respiratory and sinus support to keep you breathing easy, 225 milligrams of organic stinging nettle leaf extract per capsule. So that's a really effective dose. And that's a go-to when seasonal transitions present immune challenges. And then lastly, there's this DR, or Doctor's Research Aller Lung Support. That one is not available in full script, so I have to have that one drop shipped to you. And I hate shipping, but I can't do anything about those prices. But that supports respiratory, and all of these prices, by the way, are full retail prices, not member prices. And so, just consider when you go to purchase any of those things, if you want them, you would be getting your 25% off, as a member included in that. So this one supports respiratory health, has antioxidants, lung health, healthy sinuses. It's got acerola cherry and that bitter citrus that I told you about earlier, that naturally containing synephrine, kind of similar to ephedra, that helps with these allergic reactions. Bromelain, fruit, citrus bioflavonoid, fenugreek, organic brown rice, stinging nettle leaves, and thyme. So that's a really nice blend there in that Aller lung support. All right. So I hope that was helpful. I hope you've got a renewed sense of what's possible using some of these botanical herbal allies and foundational support and water, water, water. Let's end the slideshow. Let me stop that and see if you guys have any questions.